attendees. Thank you, everyone. I just want to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded. If anyone would like to sign up for public comment, they may do so via the chat feature. All yours, Joe and Elliot.
Thank you so much, Pamela. It is my honor to call to order the meeting of the Special Collections Committee of the Boston Public Library with my co-chair, Joe Berman. And in advance of our roll call, I know we'd like to extend a very warm welcome to our newest member who will be joining us, Portia Olayiwola. And she is a writer, performer, futurist, and poet. And among her many honors, 2020 Poet Laureate Fellow with the Academy of American Poets and the current Poet Laureate for the City of Boston. And I had hello, Portia. Welcome so much. Wonderful to see you here. And I really feel honored because we had met on your performance and the Women Take the Floor presentation. And when you spoke your poem, What is the Suffrage Movement to a Black Woman, which was a powerful addition to that presentation in 2020. And now with that, I'll turn it over to Joe Berman, who is going to read our opening statement, please.
Thank you, Elliot. And let me just say, I'm thrilled to be co-chairing this committee with you, and just thrilled and in awe of the folks who are on this committee who are volunteering their time. It's really wonderful. And of course, we met last night at the Board of Trustees meeting. It was great to meet you, and good to see a lot of familiar faces again. The trustees of the Boston Public Library reaffirm our commitment to racial equality and to principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion more broadly. The library is formally committed to becoming an anti-racist organization in response to systemic racism, inequity, and injustice prevalent in our society. We acknowledge also that the Boston Public Library's Central Library stands on land that was once a water-based ecosystem, providing sustenance for the indigenous Massachusetts people, and is a place which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange among nations. We are committed to land acknowledgement for all locations at which we operate. We reaffirm this commitment to set the context for our planning, deliberations, and public engagement so that they may take place from the spirit of welcome and respect found in our motto, free to all. And with that, I think we're going to have a roll call attendance, Pamela.
Yes. Okay. Joe Berman.
Here.
Ben Bradley.
Here.
Charles Cooney.
Here.
Matthew James will be absent, as I mentioned, for a library conference. Elliot Davis.
Here.
Warren. Jeff Hawkins had a work travel conflict. Lily Johnson.
Here.
David Leonard.
Here.
Portia, please tell me how I can pronounce your last name.
Sure thing. It's Olayiwola and
Olayiwola.
here.
Thank you very much. Welcome. And Beth Prindle.
Here.
We have a quorum. Do you want to note that we also have our chair, Priscilla Douglas, present?
Great. Welcome, Priscilla. Nice to see you again.
Thank you.
Twice in 2 days. It's great.
Thank you, Pamela. And I think with that, our next item is to approve the minutes for those who have been part of the committee to review, and I think you've had a chance to review them. If there are any amendments, we invite them here.
I move that we accept the minutes from the May 11th, 2023 meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? So moved.
Okay, thank you, Pamela. The next item on the agenda, which I'll address briefly, is just a quick preview. Oh, it says review of upcoming meeting schedule, but it's really a preview, I guess, of the upcoming meeting schedule. The next 2 meetings will be on February 29th at 8:30 and April 11th at 8:30. They're listed as running for 2 hours from 8:30 to 10:30. We don't anticipate that they will be 2 hours in length. I always, just as a matter of personal preference, like to overschedule just so I know from my own personal calendar, what to expect. But we're really hoping to hold these meetings in approximately 75 or at the longest 90 minutes. So I hope nobody's intimidated by the 2-hour block that was listed on the agenda. Next 2 meetings will be in person We love the convenience of Zoom, and Elliot is out of town, so it's great that she can participate, but it's great to be able to be together at the Central Branch. So 8:30 on February 29th, leap year, and 8:30 on April 11th, in person, and we'll run from 8:30 to approximately 10 a.m.
If I may just jump in and acknowledge that Juan Enriquez has joined the meeting.
Welcome.
Welcome. Okay, I think at that, I'm going to turn it over to the next item on the agenda to Elliot.
Thank you so much, Joe. And it's also been an honor to be working with you on this. Joe and I had an opportunity to meet with Beth Prindle earlier this year and to discuss how we could best use our time together. We felt that, of course, first and foremost, that members of Special Collections Committee should be aware of the scope and magnitude of the holdings. And of course, we are looking as that will be a foundation for leveraging our skills and expertise for augmenting the work of the Special Collections Department and the Boston Public Library. And in speaking with Beth, she felt strongly that the department had not had an opportunity to share highlights of the many acquisitions that had been made since 2019, of course, owing to COVID and the fact that there were no meetings of the Special Collections Committee during 2019, 2020, and until December of 21. So with that, Beth, we turn the meeting over to you, and I believe you're going to share screen with our overview of the departments that you're in charge of and the collections with some sense of scope, and then with that into the acquisition. So thank you so much, Beth.
Thank you so much, Elliot. And good morning, committee. It's lovely to see all of you again. In the interest of time and also recognizing that some members may need to leave a little bit early, and I know the charter discussion is really important, I'm going to try and limit both components of this and be done by 9. With the understanding that if there are questions, I'd be happy to sort of regroup afterwards. But again, thank you so much for inviting me to give a quick overview. I know many of you have served on this committee in prior years, and Portia, welcome. It's really lovely to have you part of it. So I'm going to do a whirlwind tour of the areas of collecting to set scope, and then go into a little bit more detail on the types of things that are coming into our collection new. So within my unit, I oversee research and special collections, but within the special collections unit, there are 5 areas that are of, I think, a specific significance for this committee. Some of them are new, some of them are reimagined, and some of them are longer standing. But there are 5 areas: archives, arts, which is a new imagining of our prints, photos, fine arts, and music stewardship, our conservation and preservation team, our rare books and manuscripts team, and our maps team. And I'm going to go into a little bit of detail with each of these, just so that you can have a quick overview of who is in each area and what they collect. So next slide, please. So our archives team is our newest team, and I thought I would also give you a snapshot of who is involved, the staff members who do this work. It's really important, I think, to understand that this is a village of people who perform these tasks, and this is a new village for us. We did not have an archives team until 2020. We collected archives actively since our founding in the 1850s, but we did not have specialized archivists on staff doing this work. These are materials that are considered in aggregate, meaning that they are groups of materials that document individuals, companies, organizations, families. People think of them as papers, but they also can include physical objects, realia. We have archival collections that fall within the Society of Arts and Crafts, for example, and their work just down the street, the Filene's Marketing Archives, architectural drawings, we have hundreds of thousands of those. All of these are materials that have significant significance when viewed together, but also in relation to our other collections. And this group of 4 team members, all of which, with the exception of one, are new to the BPL since 2020, are doing what we call a retrospective accessioning, which means they are going throughout all of our buildings and finding the archives that have been brought in, but not described or arranged in ways that we would consider to be best practices today. They've identified over 500 500 named collections stored throughout primarily the Central Library and our offsite storage at in West Roxbury. And it's really amazing the work that they are doing to sort of bring these collections to a place where they can be physically used in the reading room, but also used whether we're thinking about digitization and we're thinking about discovery. One of the challenges when I talk about counting our special collections, people want to know, well, how many things do you have? And the problem is for us that things are counted differently. So if you look at our rare books team and the work that they steward, for example, a book is an object, but an archive, we do not count individual pieces of paper within an archive. We generally count either containers, so boxes, or we count linear feet, meaning how much physical space they display, that they take up. And we can't give you a sense of the archive scope right now because of the retroactive accessioning work that we're doing, but to give you, a sense of, can we go back to I'm not sure what happened. I don't think I'm moving them, am I? Okay.
You actually can move them.
Oh, I can. Jay, then I would be delighted to. Then I will control my slides. I'm sorry to put that onus on you. But to give you a sense of just the physical boxes that are stored in the rare books and manuscripts department alone, because archives are everywhere. This is very strange that this keeps going. I'm not quite sure what's happening. I wonder if someone else is also controlling them. The archives alone in rare books and manuscripts, which also include collections stewarded under that department, would be considered to be 3 Hancock buildings high if you stacked all the boxes together. So just to give you a sense there, I'm moving on to our arts team. And so this is, again, a unit that has collections that have been stewarded at BPL for quite a long period of time. Our print department was formally founded in the 1940s for our print collection. So those are prints and drawings collection, which total over 130,000. We have done an inventory of those collections within the last 5 years. I will say that previous to that, no inventory had been done holistically across those collections. And so again, we are doing a ton of work around intellectual control for these materials. These include everything from, you can see at the far right, Robert McCloskey's original sketchbooks for Make Way for Ducklings. We have in the lower left, Alan Rohan Kreit, a very well-known artist working out of the South End. We have an enormous collection of his work, some really important pieces that we're looking at to have some potential collaborations with other area institutions around elevating understanding of those works. We also have works that have been transferred from other departments. So for example, the John James Audubon, the famous double elephant folio of his Birds of North America was previously stored within our rare books and manuscripts department, but we've actually physically moved it under the curatorial stewardship of our arts team because of the expertise that we now have there. Arts also includes photographs. Ben, I think, will smile knowingly when he sees this famous image of Babe Ruth. We have incredible collections of documentary photography and press photography within these collections. Again, numbers are loose because with us, we have a collection, for instance, of our Boston Herald Traveler photo morgue that spans 134 filing cabinets, filled to the brim. And we are doing some wonderful pilot work with the assistance of the Associates of the Boston Public Library to do some discovery work around these collections and a pilot digitization and metadata project to look at that. The music team also falls under this area, and music team is one. Jared Rex, who is our curator of music, he joined us again within the last 3 years, and he stewarded a massive collection of music scores, books, manuscripts, archives, correspondence related to music. A particular focus of his right now is on the Serge Koussevitzky collection because we are celebrating an anniversary of Koussevitzky's birth, and we are doing some collaborative work with the Boston Symphony Orchestra around how we can celebrate that together and thinking about that next year in 2024. And so there's some of that work that is ongoing to make our collections discoverable so that we can do those partnerships. So again, you'll notice at the far right, we have a hiring sign because we are hiring our curator of prints right now. We are undergoing the interview process and hope to have someone in place by the end of this calendar year. it's really important for me to emphasize that these are small teams stewarding really large collections. And because we are a public library, it is not simply about the curatorial work of bringing things in and accessioning them. We are servicing research appointments. They are serving in the reading room. They are performing programs and outreach. They are doing a lot of the description and metadata work around their collections. And so it's, we hold museum quality collections. David and I talk about this, that these are also library quality collections. And we really want to make sure that we're emphasizing that, but the nature of our work and how we steward those collections and how we provide access to them is really different. With our print collections, for example, they were collected really as a teaching and a process educational collection, meaning that we are not collecting the best instance necessarily of a thing. We actually want the entire process of printmaking to create that object. And so we really look at these as teaching collections, learning collections. One of the things that our team is really interested in right now is we have printing presses on site. What are ways that we actually can think about physically showing how these materials were created as well in coming years. Our conservation and preservation team are housed in a brand new conservation lab that was part of the Rare Books and Manuscripts renovation. It is a beautiful, highly scientific, but also highly artistic place. We have 3 conservators and working within that physical space to perform treatments that are about centering stewardship from a long-term standpoint, like how do we keep these materials over time? But for us, the core element is access. So it is not about making a thing beautiful or eliding over the history of the object so that it looks as it did speculatively when original. It is about actually maintaining that history over time, because for many researchers, how something has been used, how something has been augmented is as significant as the information on the object itself. We are focused on how do we deliver things safely to the reading room? How do we deliver things safely to the digitization lab? How do we deliver things safely that they can be physically exhibited? And how do we also then think about providing access to people today, but also the generations to come? And so we really have to balance all of that, but it is about sustainability. It is not about lavishing a ton of attention on a single object. We really, because we are such a small team, have to be really strategic about that work. This team is is overseen by Jessica Bitely, our preservation manager. She came to us from NEDCC in 2017. And again, we continue to build expertise in this area, which we're very excited about. Our Rare Books and Manuscripts department is now housed in a brand new physical space as part of a $16 million renovation funded through the City of Boston. They steward about 250,000 books and the hundreds of thousands of manuscripts and archival materials that I spoke previously. Getting this collection into the beautiful space and order that you see in that central slide was an extraordinarily effort led primarily by Jay Michella, who leads this department. This is 7 miles of custom built shelving, all of which has to house these materials and have them findable. It's hard to see, but every single shelf is barcoded. We operate this space much like you might consider a FedEx or an Amazon warehouse. Every single item is barcoded, every shelf is barcoded, and materials movement is very carefully tracked, which allows us not only to physically understand where materials are, but to get some really great data around what is used and when, so that we can make some decisions about the future too. Not surprisingly, many of our collections, not exclusive to Rare Books and Manuscripts, we have enormous strengths in Boston and New England history. We have wonderful collections related to 19th century abolitionist movements, one of the strongest in the country, if not in the world. It is something that we are known for, and we continue to exert a lot of effort into making even more visible. One of the exciting things that we are looking to do some hiring for in the new year is another curatorial position. As you can see, Jay is the only curator stewarding this vast collection. So we are looking to bring in some additional curatorial support, especially as it relates to our 19th century and later materials. And so that we're hoping that to get that hire on board in the 2024 year. I'm bringing up rare books and manuscripts because they do operate at, or I'm sorry, the Leventhal Map and Education Center. Sorry, I had rare books on the brain there. Because this is a very important curatorial team that stewards the library's collections. So they were created in 2004 as a public-private partnership to steward the BPL's collections of maps, atlases, and other cartographic material. These collections are vast, and they do extraordinary work, have really been leaders in the institution in terms of not only the physical stewardship and the description of the collections, but also their educational outreach and their digitization and their web outreach. We consider them very much partners and a department. As part of Special Collections, I collaborate very closely with Garrett, Emily, and the Map Center team. And David and Charlie and Priscilla, I know that you were attending the Map Center's board meeting earlier this week, and it is a collaboration that I think really only continues to strengthen. So those are the various units. And I want to move in the remaining few minutes, and then we'll come back and touch on these things, I think, again, a little bit later, if that's helpful to people. But how things enter our collection is really significant because we are stewarding things. When we bring things into Special Collections, we really consider them to be collections of enduring value, meaning we have a responsibility to steward these things over time, and for the people that we collect for and the funding that we use to do this work. So I'm giving you sort of a brief look at how things enter the collection, but Elliot brought up a really good point at the outset of this, which is acquisitions are really just beginning again for us as an institution in Special Collections in a holistic and dedicated way. We have always collected, and we have never stopped collecting, but I think we really put a lot of our collecting efforts on hold for a number of reasons. The first of which was the major renovation. We didn't have a space to bring a lot of these collections into, and so it was also an opportunity for us to do a lot of inventory and analysis work, because to collect responsibly, you need to understand what you're collecting against. We didn't have staff capacity to do this work. One of the things that I highlighted for our new trustees earlier in this week was that of the Special Collections team, and I sent out an org chart as part of the packet, 16 of those team members were not part of Special Collections until the last 5 years. And so we have been building capacity in terms of expertise. We've been building intellectual structure so that we can understand our collections, and we've been building internal structure so that we can internally respond and be responsive. We collect these things for and in the public good, and so we need to make sure that we are transparent about this. And so this presentation today is a lead-in to a process that I want to establish with this committee going forward in 2024, which is a more formal reporting of what we are collecting, why we are collecting, and a more transparency around this work, because there is a 5-year quantity of materials, and because we are still working through a collection development policy process, which I'm going to be sharing with you sorry, there's a bug in here. It's driving me nuts. So I'm not flailing because I'm excited. I'm flailing because there's a small friend running through here. So this is a look ahead at what we'll be doing, but I also want to show you kind of really quickly how we go through what we go through. So one of the questions we get is, how do we fund the things that we buy? We have many trust funds available to us, some of which are decades, even centuries old. Some are very specific. So we have trust funds that are books printed before X date, materials related to World's Fair, International World's Fair. We have items that have Italian that are connected to some kind of Italian historical significance. But then we have large trust funds that say, for example, for the benefit or the Prince, now the arts department. We have trust funds that are several $100s. We have trust funds that are in the millions. We take a distribution every year that is dedicated through our finance and audit team with each of these trusts, and many of them have a variety of either dispersal or restrictions related to them. So the acquisition process, I'm not going to go into it in huge detail, except to say that we have become much more rigorous about documenting all aspects of this and maintaining collection files and approval processes through this. And what I really want to point out is on the right is the internal process by which my team leaders are making decisions about how we are bringing things into our collections. This is going to feed into our collection development process, but essentially we have to be responsible to the communities, not a community of specific users, but to the communities of users, many of whom have different needs. How does it enhance the value of what we have already and collect to what we have already, but also where are areas that we are not meeting users that we can have them be reflected in the collections. It is not about filling a gap to fill a gap, to say, oh, well, we've collected something from this area, but it is how do we actually bring it in and steward it and share it with those communities, and how does it contribute to that broader understanding? The other thing is being good stewards ourselves. We cannot ethically bring things in if we cannot process it and deal with it with our existing resources. If I could get t-shirts for the special collections team, it would say be a good ancestor. And we mean that to our successors in our departments, that you cannot, I think we had an avaricious acquisition strategy where we brought in collections with an expectation that we could deal with them later, but later is now for us. And so we are not going to have these collections come in and then have them sit and not be usable. So the next slide, I'm just going to go through a couple of, I want to give you just a taste of what, so we've brought in 220 different acquisitions in the last 5 years, but I want to give you a taste of what we were collecting and why. And so how these fit into various areas. The Martin Luther King Jr. print is arriving on Friday. We are really excited about it. John Wilson was a local artist born in Roxbury. This is a fairly contemporary print from the 2000s. We are excited to have this not only come into the collection, but one of the things we're really thinking about is what are ways that we, in fact, is this something we can put on public view? And so we are really thinking, again, with all of the interest and the excitement around the Embrace, on the comment around the work that's happening with the Kings in Boston, how do we also showcase both local artists and the fact that we also are connecting to the King legacy here at BPL. The Cherokee Phoenix arrived 2 weeks ago. So again, this is super active collecting that we are doing. This is very rare printing of the first newspaper printed in an Indigenous language in the US. It's exciting for us to have it, but it's also really exciting because this month we are celebrating Indigenous Peoples Month, and we have immediately moved this from arriving at the loading dock to being on display as part of our sampler for public to come in and see this month in our special collections reading room. Anyone can come in and see these items. And so it's not just things come in and go into the collection storage spaces, it's how are things actively coming into the spaces over time. We collect things that are unexpected for a library, including this beautiful silk purse that has a medieval manuscript lining. It is an incredible physical object of its own, but it also, because we have an extraordinary collection of medieval manuscripts, this is a different iteration of how manuscripts were used, but it also has a very interesting connection to how it relates to women's history with objects. And so we have sort of all of these things. You can look at this medieval manuscript and read the manuscript waste that was used for it, which is, we've already had a scholar come in and do that, but also the physical making of this and the stewardship of this over time. This is, again, a different thing for us to, for our conservators to think about, but our conservators created beautiful housing for it to be safely protected in our stacks. Duke Riley's Enchafed Flood speaks of the Massachusetts. It is a beautiful mosaic. It speaks to the molasses flood. So it has a connection with Boston history, but it is on display in the McKim building. It came in and went physically on display. And we're using it not only to talk about the historical event, the act of making this mosaic, but also it is in a space where the mosaics of the building, of the McKim building, also have a really interesting heritage. And so we're looking, what if a thing comes in, how do we make connections with how historically we work with those. It speaks to our collections over time. Caleb Cole, again, is a new photographer for our collection. We have collected a series of their images. So Caleb presents themselves in different physical spaces with different costume. Not so these are not self-portraits, but this is portraiture of different personas that Caleb is adopting through this medium. But one thing that we also are excited about, this is something that we have created a photo series, a public program, where we had the artists come in and speak about their work to a public audience this fall. It's part of a 3-part lecture series that we're doing, again, around our new acquisitions. So we collected the work, but it's also how are we talking about the work and how are we sharing the work? And that is really important to us. Another new acquisition is our New England Free Press publication. So this is a publisher out, this was a press out of Cambridge, very radical press that published, probably the best known is Our Bodies, Ourselves. Again, talk about topics that, if anyone was watching election results yesterday, talk about topics that are incredibly contemporary for us, but it was not just about collecting. So we collected through a seller this collection of these materials, but we also have been active collecting every issue of Our Bodies, Ourselves that we can to see, because it evolved over time, because we want to make sure that we have these materials available for research and stewardship and access. It's really our responsibility. And the final thing I'll show are the map collections, new acquisitions. I know there's a question, well, why would you be showing the map centers work? These are new acquisitions done by a separate 501c3. Well, the Map Center collects on behalf of BPL. So the materials that they collect enter not the Map Center's collections, but enter the library's collections. So they are part of our special collections. They are collected using our acquisitions funding. They go through the same approval processes that our collections in the other departments go through. And these are, again, things that we as an institution are committed to stewarding over time. And so Garrett Nelson and his team work very closely with my team. We serve on acquisitions committees together. He is part of the collection development policy work that we've been developing. We're going to talk a lot more about that on in our February meeting, but I now recognizing that I'm over a little bit, I'm happy to answer any quick questions, and we also can come back to this later if that's helpful for people as well.
I think we have a couple of minutes for some questions, but I do want to transition to the next item on the agenda because I think it flows naturally from Beth's excellent presentation, which is a discussion of our the Special Collections Committee's charter. But does anybody, maybe Beth, if you could take down your screen for a second so we can see each other. I don't know if that's possible. Okay. Yeah,
I can't, but magically it happened.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody have any immediate questions that come to mind that they'd like to ask Beth before we move into the next item on the agenda?
Yeah, I have a quick question. Beth, all these categories presented under priority alignment and requirements, are these being formalized for the first time, or have they been in existence before?
So it's not the first time, but we have not reviewed or amended our collection development policy in over a decade, and it is incredibly out of date. So we have, as an institutional level, are re-evaluating all of our collection development priorities. One of the things, for example, that is not specifically called out in our existing collection development policy is our commitment to EDI. And there are some, I think, legacy descriptions of what we collect for and why. I think that we have a new attitude about our priorities for collecting. And so Yes, but no, Ben. We have some very old archaic things that are not serving us well in terms of our new ideas for collecting. But my expectation is when we meet with you in February, you are going to see the new draft of the policy that will include that codified language. And we'll really be looking for input from this
Yep.
committee on that and responses to that. This is the work really across the entire library. We have convened actually this week, Melissa Andrews, who oversees the collection development team, and I led 2 staff open listening sessions. We had over 30 staff members from across the institution weigh in on what they believed was important in a collection development policy going forward. And so we're really looking to have that breathe life into this new policy.
And is there a separate line item in the budget for acquisitions?
There is. So we're not, the line item would not be in the policy itself. The line item is in the budget so we create budgets annually. With our trust funds and with our other funding, that is part of how we set our budgets. And so there are line items that we create, essentially our spending both for circulating and non-circulating collections. And that expands beyond special collections we have, because our research collections are closed stack collections, but not serviced through this curatorial areas of special collections. All of them have individual funding sources and streams, and we need all of that to kind of play in to the collecting strategy, but we each have individual needs under that as well.
I see Juan's hand up. Go ahead, Juan.
So just in general, when you think 30 or 100 years from now, what are people going to want to know? One of the things they're going to want to know is how did we get into such a mess in climate change, and what were people thinking? And just having a general collection on how people were approaching it, what did we know, what didn't we know, what started happening, how did it happen, might be very important in 100 years. The other thing that presents kind of a challenge, when you look at AI, a lot of that stuff happened in Boston. And so Claude Shannon was working here, and Marvin Minsky was working here, and the early data models were here. And when a lot of the sort of ChatGPT-1 model, ChatGPT-2, 3, 4, a lot of that stuff is happening out of here. And just holding some of those models and holding the models and being able to do what you were doing with our bodies ourselves, of how did this evolve, how did it change over time? And the problem is a lot of that isn't printed, right? And a lot of that may not be accessible because the medium might change. It's almost like storing name-driven pikes in terms of trying to get the old bulbs or the old LEDs,
Right.
or the old transistors. But it may be worth thinking, because that is so important, and Boston is so important in that particular evolution, and it's happening so fast that you may want to think about that.
I 100% agree. And Juan, you point to something really critical with our collecting too that I didn't go into in detail, but it is digital stewardship and stewardship over time. So for example, if you're thinking about even just a basic example is photography, right? When we were collecting positive prints and even negatives, right? There is a physical, yes, there are stewardship responsibilities and preservation issues with that. But if we collect born digital, and I'm also thinking, Charlie, thinking about the Map Center and collecting GIS, collecting all of the sort of born digital mapping data. Architectural records are another area where, again, it's very different now with things created through CAD and others. We have physical papers, architectural records, but it's very different going forward. I think one thing that we need to do better that we have not been doing is also understanding what our peers are collecting. And so, and think about collaborative collecting. So we don't all need to collect either competitively or encyclopedically. We can't. We have finite space, we have finite resources, we have finite capacity. But I think if we can collaboratively, there are so many peer institutions that are doing this work, and we need to be sharing that information and choosing our niches. And then to the point of what you're talking about, Juan, if we collect in one area, what are the ancillary components that various institutions, whether it's MIT, whether it is Graduate School of Design, whether it is BU, whether it is Northeastern's public and activist archives, like we need to make sure that we're connecting researchers across those.
And if I can just add, I think, I think the conversation of this group, this committee, will naturally take us into some areas that we might have considered more adjacent to special collections rather than core to special collections. And the beauty of having special and research collections now under Beth, hopefully she hires an assistant director soon, but it does allow us to explore those synergies, because traditionally special collections would be fine arts, music, rare books, manuscripts, and maybe not the contemporary archives. But Rare Books contains Galileo first editions. That's the exact equivalent of what you're talking about in terms of some of these Boston-based IT inventions, for sure. So there's a lot of nuance here to unpack, for sure. So it's both adjacent, but maybe it's just as relevant to the core of what we should be doing going forward. And I do think the other area, so digital preservation, research collections, archival materials more broadly, are all the adjacencies here that I think you have correctly brought into focus.
Priscilla, I see your hand up, and if you could unmute yourself first.
Thank you. Just want to make certain that we capture this. We're starting our strategic planning process, and this question and issue posed by Juan is something that we, Joe, I know you're a member of the Strategic Planning Committee, will bring forward. And obviously, this particular committee is a key component, key stakeholders as we move forward in the strategic planning process. So I hope that we continue this conversation and really look as we examine what does it mean to be a 21st century library, what is our legacy, and how can we have an informed citizenry for the future to answer these big questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Priscilla. If there are no more questions, and Elliot, if you agree, I think we should move on, because this is a really good segue into the next item on the agenda, which is the review of our committee charter and the role of the committee. And you all hopefully have had a chance to read the draft of this, which has gone through several iterations over the past year or so. And I guess I'll sort of set the stage by saying, the conversation and the questions and feedback from Priscilla and Ben and Juan are really helpful, because I see this committee as a supportive body to support Beth and her incredible team, to give them our feedback, to give them our support, and to take advantage of the incredible expertise and experience that's in this room or on the screen. So, people ask me often, well, what's the role of the Special Collections Committee of the Boston Public Library? And I think being an advisor and support to the staff is important, but we have drafted, or many of us have been drafting over the past year or so, this draft charter. And it's kind of our constitution, if you will, right? This is kind of our broad theme of kind of what our role is. Why do we show up 3 times a year to meet with Beth and each other and talk about this stuff? So this is not final, obviously. It's a draft, but I'd be interested, we all would be interested, particularly Beth, I think, in people's comments, suggestions, reactions to this, to the charter. It's really divided into a few parts. One is the purpose, which you see on your screen. And then farther down, if you have it on the document, are the committee responsibilities, which is really getting into the nuts and bolts of what we should be doing as individual members or collectively. So why don't we, I think we'll just sort of open it up to the entire document. If people have thoughts about the general purpose or our specific responsibilities as a committee, I'd be interested, we'd all be interested in hearing what people have to say. And at some point, I don't know, governance-wise, maybe Priscilla or Pamela can help us with this. Is this something that we as a committee vote on, or is it something that the trustees votes on? How does this work?
the committee should adopt this as its charter once it believes it's final.
Okay, fine.
Would we
I-
consider including the word software in the subjects and formats?
Okay, I think that's a really good idea. Is there another word, Juan, in addition to software that might encompass kind of what you were talking about, the sort of more ephemeral, digital?
Digital would work. I mean, it's 98% of communication today.
Yeah,
I think digital is better as an umbrella word.
Yeah, I do too, because Beth mentioned the digital archives, which
Yeah,
would presumably
yeah.
take on software.
sure. Any other thoughts from the committee? Any members of the committee on this document?
I mean, I just particularly like the three activities in the purpose sentence that are the development, the stewardship, and promotion. I think those are the three legs of the stool of this work in some ways, and so I'm sure Ben may recall, but whoever came up with that particular phrasing, you know, I think is really, really good and really reminds us of what we're about in balance: stewarding, developing, and promoting.
Where is this statement available after the screen goes blank to review further? Is it in the
It's in the
website somewhere?
materials. Yeah,
Put it in your materials. That was sent
In
out.
the minutes, yeah, the materials, but Pamela
All right,
sent.
okay, thanks.
yeah. I think if I could just pause for a second on promotion, and this is always it's always a challenge, right? We've got this incredible collection of stuff, and I talk to people who lived in Boston their entire lives and have no idea what treasures the Boston Public Library holds. And one of the challenges is letting people know about this, right? Amplifying our collection. How do we do that? And I think as we develop the strategic plan, as we think about the major renovation to the McKim building, one of the things this committee can be very active in is figuring out, is there a dedicated exhibition space, whether it's a room, series of rooms, just a display case? Do we, allow some of this stuff to travel to branches, given the security concerns and the resources that would require? I think that this committee should really think strategically about how we let the people of Boston, and frankly visitors to Boston, know what this library holds, because it's really, really unique and not very many people know about it. Charlie, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of 2 points, and then I'd like to emphasize something else. One is, I think the opportunity for us to collaborate and really look at ways that we can work with others. The example is with the BSO on our collection of musical scores, and they of course have a phenomenal collection of their own. But looking into ways to collaborate to bring alive not only our collection but these collections, and certainly in the Map Center we've been trying to do that, and you'll see more of it in our future exhibitions as well. So collaboration, I think, is an important element. It's touched on here, but it's almost in passing.
Okay.
Second, what Juan made me think of the point that what is current today will be past in the future. And thinking about the issues that are particularly relevant to what we deal with today and have a lot of relevancy, as Beth pointed out, in the special collections, we need to think that today is tomorrow's past, and not to forget the importance in our collection of things that are current. And then I'd like to emphasize the point that Joe made about the space. I'm biased because of the Map Center's constrained in its exhibition space, among other things. But space is part of access, and I love walking by in the entrance to the library. I love walking by the things that are on display that are kind of current in there, I can't help but stop. And I think we need more of being able to exhibit, as Beth pointed out, some really exciting things that from the past that are so relevant to the present.
Thank you, Charlie. And speaking of exhibits, I'm just going to give a shout out to the Map Center's current exhibition on the mapping of the T. I know there's a more formal title, but I've seen it a couple times. It's phenomenal. If anybody hasn't seen it, I urge you to stop by the Map Center and see it. Priscilla, I think you have.
It really is fun and relevant.
It is, absolutely.
Thank you, Joe, for emphasizing that.
Priscilla, go ahead.
I want to pick up on the theme of collaboration, which is so important given our current limitations of exhibition space. And one of the things is we know that at the MFA, we right now have Fashioned by Sargent, but we, the BPL, actually have the murals. So it would great when there are events in the city that we really take advantage of communication, taking a look at the fact that we could bring more people into the library and have some sort of special things. I know that I think I bumped into Lily at the opening or at the Fashioned by Sargent at the MFA. So it's a fantastic exhibit.
Yeah, I see all of the things that just got mentioned as falling under this charter as it exists. I think with the addition of the digital component in the format section, and I think maybe adding key collaborations in the second sentence of the second paragraph. In fact, none of what you're talking about is precluded. And I think, in fact, we're already doing that. I think in the future, you know, whether it's now or 3 months from now or 3 years from now, those are the things we want to be doing more about. But I think in terms of discussing the charter and role, those things are explicitly encouraged under promotion, and a hearty yes to the conversation. But I don't know that we have to add more than those 2 items at this point, from what I've heard, to the charter.
And I think in that, and Priscilla, I see your hand up again, and I'll call on you in a minute. I think in order to bring this item to a close, what I'm going to suggest, and I'm just going off on a limb on this, Elliot, but tell me if I'm okay, is I'd like to be in a position at our next meeting to actually have a final vote on this. So I think what we'll do is we'll circulate a redlined version with these changes between, you know, hopefully soon, so people remember this conversation. And obviously, if others, having now had a chance to look at it and talk about it, think about it some more, have other suggestions, please let us know. But I think what I'd like to be able to do is at our January meeting, be in a position to present a final proposed final version of the charter, and we can finally, after many iterations, take an up or down vote on it. Elliot, are you good with that?
Yes, that's what I was going to exactly say, that I have been taking notes, Joe, from every notes recorded by Pamela, but this way we can put it back to Beth and David to also look at it in the language and go forward with an approval, I hope.
Yeah, we'll circulate it to everybody. And obviously, if others have ideas as they think about the meeting, you know, in the next couple of days, feel free to share those. But I would like to get this put to bed, because I think we need to have this charter so we can move forward. But I think we're almost there. Priscilla, did you have something else you wanted to say, or you're good? Okay. All right. I think at this point we should move on to the next item, which Elliot, you're going to talk a little bit about the 3-year plan and kind of where we are.
Yes, and I think fortunately, Beth, thanks to that great presentation, you've really helped us set the stage for our next meeting, which is really to dive more deeply into your collection development policy, which, as you noted, hadn't been looked at for over a decade. And I know on this committee, having worked on a number of policies with, for instance, Lily over the years at the MFA Boston, we have a lot of expertise and on this subject in this committee. So we're thrilled to be doing that. So that's coming up as we think ahead. So hence why so important today to look at the areas that have been acquired, and to really, in Beth's presentation, think about that gray area as policy members of this committee, selection and criteria priorities. Because thinking about how we can best use the years ahead, the meetings ahead, we know we're part of this larger ongoing strategic planning process for the BPL. Unfortunately, on this committee, we're thrilled to have Joe Berman on the BPL Strategic Planning Committee, and how that work will then, how the work of the Special Collections Committee will fulfill that work. And then in thinking about getting a clearer understanding of those future goals for the Special Collections Committee in the service of the larger BPL strategic plan, I think we'll also be looking at the composition of the committee in terms of how we reflect the many communities. And I like that Beth also emphasized that in her presentation, but the many communities that the BPL serves and the expertise needed on this group, among this group, to really bring the future goals of the SCC to fruition. We also know that there are several important milestones that have been mentioned in previous minutes, but for instance, the Boston commemoration events are coming up in 2026, the 250th anniversary of the nation, and how the special collections would fit into that process. And then the larger and much longer and bigger picture of the McKim Building project and the role of special collections in that. And I think Joe and I will look to all of this group and others to bring best practices as you tour the nation, the world, the Commonwealth, near and far, that you'll bring your best ideas forward to just have those as part of a longer roster. And just one other note, I just wanted to help those on the committee who've already been on the committee for many years, unlike me, who has only just joined recently. I have gone through, thanks to Pamela's links, the past minutes, so that we'll be sure to capture important topics from past meetings so that you feel we're all moving forward together. And I think with that, that's where we look to plan as we go, obviously with Beth and members of her team and David, to plan well these meetings going ahead as we move ahead. And I think if there are any questions or additions, I think with that, Joe, we were going to turn over to you for any further new business, which might be part of these future meetings. So maybe that's a segue back to you.
Sorry,
Elliot
and Joe, can I just?
I would learn to turn my mute off. David's tired of hearing of this, but speaking of visiting other museums, I happened to be in Dublin 2 weeks ago for a legal conference and had a couple of free days beforehand. And I visited the National Library of Ireland, which is in Dublin, and they have a beautiful library. The reading room actually is closed; it's only for researchers. But they have a really nice exhibition space where they display a lot of their collected works. And being Ireland, of course, no shortage of great writers and poets. So they had a wonderful exhibition on the life of W.B. Yeats, famous Irish poet in the late 19th, early 20th century. It was very extensive, very substantial, dedicated exhibition space in the library. I think there's probably some stuff there that's on loan from other institutions, but really focusing on what they have. And that inspired me. And I was texting David while I was over there, what we could do as we think about the McKim Building and our strategic plan. Wouldn't it be great to have something like that with rotating exhibitions of some of our material. So just something to think about going forward. In the meantime, being able to display things in our display cases in the Boylston Street part of the central branch, and hopefully maybe being able to have some things travel around to branches, I think would be great. That's just a quick point of personal privilege there. Any new business that anybody has they want to bring up, including composition of the committee, governance, anything like that?
Just in reaction to Elliot's presentation of the upcoming work for the next plan, I do recall, and I'm sure this was in previous minutes, that the intention of one of the 3 meetings would be to spend time with physical acquisitions themselves. So I'm sure as you both plan with Beth, the detailed agendas for the next 2 meetings, whichever one makes sense. I just don't want to lose sight of that because yes, I love the digital and I grew up in part of that world, but I still think being next to these incredible works is still just sort of a key part of what we get to do.
Definitely.
Thanks. Any other new business? Maybe if Jay, if you could take the screen down so we can see each other.
Jay stepped out for a minute, so I'm in charge of it and I can't take it down. So
okay, no problem, Pamela. That's fine.
Joe, I do want to, as clerk, I know I don't normally speak at these. I just wanted to mention that the board did recently vote to have a board management portal. It is called Onboard. A lot of you may be, used to some of these board management portals that you have. Currently, it's only accessible to our trustees as we're in the learning stages of it, and it's each person is licensed, and we're building out our licenses. So as soon as that expands, we hope to include all of our committees as well. When that happens, I will be sure to reach out to each of you so that we can kind of get you all trained a little bit on it. But I just wanted to point that out so that you know it's coming.
That's great. And on that note, Beth, is it possible for us to get a copy of your deck? I don't know if Beth's still here or not, but
She's muted. She'll get her.
I am sorry, I was muted. I'd be delighted to. I'd be happy to send that along.
Yeah.
And I'm just making a note for myself based on David's suggestion that we see objects. I'll ask the team, maybe our February meeting. Part of it could be in the special collections reading room, and we could do some kind of highlights in that space.
That'd be
So
great.
because we'll be on site, right? Yeah, we're on site.
We'll be
for
on
that.
site, yeah.
Yep.
And
Okay.
I think the organizational chart that's in your minute, or it's in your materials for the meeting, is really helpful. Because it really gives an overview of everything that Beth talked about, and how you hear prints, manuscripts, rare books, photographs, how that all kind of relates to each other, and yet how they're sort of separate in their own kind of way. So I think studying the org chart, I think, is extremely helpful.
Much of which is new and is only been possible thanks to funding from the associates and from the Boston Public Library Fund, and a whole range of external donors and foundations. And so, yes, there's some city money in that, but it's really this alignment of private funding over the last 3-4 years that has brought this to life. Because it really is, you have to go back before 2001 before you see staffing levels at anything like this, and that was a different time.
And
it wasn't 1848, but it was a different time than where we are now.
And as much as we can do as a committee to advocate for you for the resources that you need, obviously we'll do that. Seeing that there's no more new business, do you want to move to the public comment portion of the meeting, Elliot? Pamela?
Yes, please. I think we'll look forward to that. If there
We
is
don't actually have any public comments.
We were looking forward to it, but we're deflated.
Well, we'll hope that they'll be so overwhelmed by Beth's exceptional presentation and all the contributions here. So thank you, Pamela, for putting us together. And Jay.
If I can just the slides, I'll send them to you after this meeting, but they are also published on our website after every meeting.
Great.
Priscilla is making a public comment.
I think Priscilla has a public comment.
Thank you. I want to thank Ben and Matthew Dames for their work. And I certainly appreciate the fact that Joe and Elliot have stepped up and into these positions. And again, I want to reiterate a really great welcome to Portia. This committee is truly special in terms of your love of the library, your love of special collections, and your long-term commitment. You really make a difference in terms of who we are in the city, who we are. We have great treasures, and I know each of you in your own individual communities has an opportunity to share the treasures and to bring people. So I'm commending you for your work and your engagement. I also just want to segue, is Charlie still here? I don't have a full screen. Charlie, will you talk about Heaven and Earth? The next big event that you're going to have at the Leventhal Map Center?
Yes, just very briefly, following the transportation exhibit, our next one will be on Heaven and Earth. And this is very much a collaboration where we will bring in several very large maps representing Heaven and Earth. That it's my understanding from Richard Pegg, who's on our board of trustees. These maps have never been exhibited together before, so this will be a very historic event. I have not seen them. I can't wait because they're from what I understand and the photos I've seen, are just magnificent, large scale maps to represent the heaven and earth. So, and there's also a book that Richard Pegg has, or is just finishing now, that will also celebrate this as well. So we're very excited, and I would just emphasize that it is a collaboration. It is bringing together some of our assets, but bringing together for the first time and being a convener of these marvelous objects. So we look forward to welcoming everybody to that exhibit.
And Charlie, if I may, Richard's own background is really as an art historian, and so this curation work is really showing maps as artistic objects as much as historical documents. So it's doubly relevant to the special collections
Yes.
work that we're doing in that case.
It is. Thank you, David.
So I think with that, Joe, if we're all complete, we have a motion to adjourn. And thanks to all for attending and everybody for making it possible for us to be together. We look forward to working with everyone, and Portia, again, very warm welcome to you adding to this group. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Great meeting. Have a good Thanksgiving.
Thank you,
and,
everyone.
see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you all.